Hello, my name's David Cole and I'm Technical Director for Samfield Penstock Solutions. Today I'm going to talk to you about water pollution prevention. So water pollution prevention is what it says. It's preventing the pollution of water. Really, when we look at water, what we're saying is we're looking at the preventing water getting into our streams, into the sea, into the brooks and the local area, really, lakes and ponds. I think we all have seen in the local sort of media with David Attenborough and the Blue Planet that people are now actively looking at, hang on a minute, there's a lot of pollution in our oceans, in our seas that we didn't really think was there. There's a lot of plastic, there's a lot of mess, there's a lot of chemicals. And I think what's happened is, especially in the last couple of years, is that the public have started to become interested in actually what's in our food chain. Everything really around it now is the fact that everything that we do has a consequence. So when we look at water pollution in the past, it was looking at minor spills and a few chemicals. We saw some dead fish and somebody would react to it. What we're looking at now is it's happening all the time. So how do businesses actually manage that they make sure that the waste that they produce that goes down into the drainage network isn't polluted? So when we look at water pollution prevention, the Environment Agency is the overall regulator that basically will control it. If you cause a pollution event, in other words, you kill some fish or you impact the environment, there's a good chance you'll feel the impact of the Environment Agency. They could drive a prosecution which could cause you to be fined. You could go to prison if you're found to be culpable of actually causing a pollution event by neglect or as a deliberate act. So that's what you've got to be mindful of, is that actually pollution is a crime. There isn't really any excuse, and every single one of us is actually involved with that. So from a major multinational business, they don't want to cause a pollution incident, and equally their employees are responsible just like they are. But ultimately us as individuals, we all have a responsibility that if we carry out an act that actually causes the pollution of water and kills some fish, we've actually committed a criminal offence. So the big issue here is if you have a water pollution incident, you've caused an incident, you've caused an event that could lead to a prosecution. So what we have to look at is, how did it happen? Could it have been prevented? And is anybody negligent? So when we have an incident and a business needs to look at what are their risks. So if they've got materials on site and that are potentially harmful to the environment, it's their responsibility to look at how they move and handle and manage that material to make sure that they don't have a pollution incident. Now that's easier said than done, because moving materials around a factory, you can't always be overly protected. But if a pollution incident does take place and a chemical does get spilled, it's really important that that business or that individual has a system in place that stops it actually entering the storm drain, entering the water course and causing a fish kill or an environmental impact event. So this is an interesting area because things have changed. Back 20 years ago, you'd get a minor, small little fine which was a bit like a rap on the knuckles, no matter how big your company was. But in 2014, the government produced the Environmental Sentencing Guidelines, which is a guidance for courts to actually create some punishment when a pollution incident happens. This actually then focuses on the size and the turnover of the business. Really what they're simply saying is, if you're a big, massive multinational company and you have a pollution event, you've actually got the money to have prevented that, and you should be investing in making sure that your business is best practice. There is no real excuse for a big multinational company to have a pollution event, be it from a fire, accidental spillage. It's not acceptable. So those fines now in recent years have increased. Recently in 2016, Tesco's, for instance, were fined £8 million for a single oil spill. Thames Water were fined £20 million, which was the largest fine to date for a pollution incident. So these fines have impacted and changed massively. So when you look at it as well, there's other penalties. As a director or a person for a business, if you can be seen that you actually deliberately caused a pollution act or it was negligent, you can go to prison and you can individually lose money. You can actually be fined. So there's things such as civil sanctions which allow the regulator to actually get money back, and you don't really have much chance to actually appeal against those types of cases. So when we look at a pollution incident as well, we've just talked now about the sort of criminal side of it and how it can impact on a business if they go to court. But ultimately, it might not go to court, but you will still have to pay for that clear up. And that clear up can be massive, because that clear up, if it's caused a major impact on an environmental location, you're going to have to put that back to as it was before the incident. You're going to have to protect your brand necessarily for the impact that you've caused. So there's a lot of work to do, and it's a very expensive area to get involved with, because nobody really knows what the impact is until after the event. So surely it's better just not to have the event in the first place. So for over 20 years, I've been talking to businesses all over the UK and some around the world about this whole subject of water pollution prevention. It's never really been top on anybody's agenda until an incident takes place. And I think that's probably one of the sort of areas I think always find disappointing is I've got a number of clients I've worked with over the years that have had no interest in what I do to start with. Then they've actually had a pollution incident. Then they've had the regulator on site. Then they've gone to court. Then they've had all the court costs. Then they've had all the clean-up operations. And some of those sites that I've worked with, it would have been so simple just to have taken the attitude to go, pollution is a risk. It can happen. It's just like getting into your car. We take out car insurance because we know there is a potential that we can have an accident and we could lose our car. We might need to replace our car. We could be seriously injured. So we need insurance to protect ourselves. And yet when it comes to the environment side of it, a lot of businesses, even quite large, take the attitude, it shouldn't happen. And the problem is, it does happen. So a number of sites we go to, always looking at water pollution as far as just a complicated, difficult subject. So I think it gets pushed to one side because they look at it and they go, it could be a tank over there, it could be this over here. We take a different approach. It is actually far more achievable than most businesses think it really is. All you've got to do is, first of all, accept that a pollution incident can happen. I think then what we like to do as a business, we take the guidance, the best practice guidance, which is Series 736, and we use that part of it because there's some really good parts to it. So it'll actually allow you to look at volumes, gives you a sort of benchmark to work to. And we take that benchmark and we say, right, that is our worst case scenario. Let's work to the worst case scenario and see what it looks like. Once you understand a worst case scenario, everything else behind it is easy. And sometimes that worst case scenario is far simpler once you actually understand it to actually manage than you probably thought. And that's our process, and that can be done. There's not really many sites that I can think of where I would say it's impossible or not affordable. Process. So when you're looking at spill modelling, which is what I'm sort of looking at with the assessment to look at water pollution containment, it's something that can be done just by walking around the site, carrying out some surveys, actually carrying out some topography to look at the site to create an animation of your risk. So it can be done without anybody actually knowing you're really doing it. Once you've achieved that, then you've got an understanding of what actually you need to do. And the costs can be as low as probably a few £1,000s, up to hundreds of thousands of pounds, depending on how far you want to go with it. But you can't really make a decision until you actually have an understanding of what your risk is in the first place. So our idea would be that you should follow our 6-step process, which is one, is to understand the regulation. Then you need to understand how regulation fits in with your particular business. You then need to look at your risk and be honest about what your risk is so you understand how much your potential is. Once you've done that, you need to do a design, understand that design. Then implement the design, put it into place. Then after that, what you need to do is monitor, maintain and document the system that you've put in and make sure it continues to work. And as guidance changes, move your system with the guidance so that you're always improving, so you keep on top of the system. I think water pollution prevention is absolutely essential. I can't believe that there's so many companies that have pollution events every single year, and we read about them in the press and we look at it with the David Attenborough type approach, which is really interesting. Is there is plastic in our water, but there's also lots of chemicals, and those chemicals are coming from the processes that we produce. And it's about time that actually we really took this as a subject and really got hold of it, because it's not that complicated. I think water pollution prevention is something that's achievable. It's definitely affordable, and any business, no matter how small, how large, should be looking at it right now.
Amazing.
If you want any more information or want to get in touch, why don't you go to our website, which is www.penstocksolutions.co.uk.